Good afternoon. I want to thank you all for coming out to our first annual Black History Oratorical Contest. I want to thank you on behalf of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, the Alpha Omega Sigma Fort Knox chapter. I am Thaddeus Brown. I'm the Vice President and the Education Chair of our chapter. I'm here with our President of our chapter, Brother Tyrone Toomer, and some of the brothers from our chapter. So today we have a panel of four judges. So we have Pastor Palmer, we have Ms. Chelsea Manziel, we have Ms. Teresa Trimble, and Ms. Michelle Bueller. I met her once. Charge it to my head and not my heart. So today we'll be hearing from 7 of North Hardin High School awesome students. We'll be hearing from Mr. Andreas Jenkins, Willow Rosario, Gabriella Palmo, excuse me if I mess it up, Jahari Gilmore, Sydney Osborne, Tyler Woods, and Naisha Barner. So when they come up, this is our first annual Black History Oratorical Contest. So give them something to want to come back for. Also pay attention, because this is something that we're doing not only for our youth, but for our community. So as the students are lined up, that's the way that they will come up. So first we have Mr. Andreas Jenkins.
All right, hello. My name is Andreas Jenkins. I'm a sophomore, 10th grade here at North Hardin. I chose to write about the history and impact of Black culture because I felt that it's very present in today's society and that it encompassed most of the other topics as well. So here we go, I guess. Black culture is a regular, everyday culture, especially in America. That just goes to show that not only has it had an impact on culture as a whole, but in such a large impact that is in now everyday people's lives. Although I'm writing about Black culture, I feel that it is very important to describe what I really mean by that phrase. Also, how it affected everyone and even continues to impact the entire world to this day. As I mentioned before, I believe that in order to write about any topic, it is important to define that topic very specifically. I would like to start by saying that Black culture is very different from what Black culture actually is. The word culture itself means the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group, also the characteristic features of everyday existence shared by people in a place or time. The Black culture that most often comes to mind is just assumptions and stereotypes about Black people's lives. It is just a trend that others follow and companies use to sell or endorse products. The other part of that phrase I've yet to touch, the Black portion. Black is referring to African Americans, not any other peoples. This also ties into things that are considered Black, or when someone says they are blacker than someone else for liking or doing something. You cannot act or be Black. That is just a stereotype conceived by the so-called Black culture. It all takes away from the real Black culture and the real Black experience. Now that I've specified the Black culture I'm writing about, I would like to show how it has made an impact on society. From some of the most common shoes to lots, if not all, music genres and other forms of art. Black culture is truly an amazing and very common thing within this day and age. Being only about 13% of the United States population, African Americans make up 2 of the biggest sports in the U.S., football and basketball. The NFL consists of around 70% Black athletes, and the NBA having the same, if not a little higher percentage. Sports has a culture of its own, since most, if not all, people have watched or played a sport in their lives. seeing how there are dedicated fans to these professional leagues and how not long ago black people weren't even allowed to play or they had to play in leagues of their own. All of these millions of sports fans that love sports and the athletes that are entertaining to watch are impacted just by the athletes themselves. Now take into consideration that about 3/4 of two of the U.S.'s biggest sports are African Americans. That alone should say tons of how much black culture impacts our society today. That is without all of the smaller scale and unrecognized people behind the scenes and other ways black culture is still impacting everyone today. Seeing as I've clarified what black culture is and its impact now, it is perfect to write about the history of it. American Americans started to build their impact way back when they first started becoming enslaved. The hymns and songs they sang evolved over time into the blues and spiritual music. Throughout time, it branched off into every genre you can imagine, from country to rock and everything in between. From speech and common words we use today because of African Americans, all the way to the food we eat. Soul food was invented by slaves in America. Living off of scraps, they made what they could with what they had. The United States nor the rest of the world would not be the same without black people in the way they changed it in the past and still continue to do. The history of black culture is so vast and still happening today that it'd be impossible to cover it all. But just remember this, that the black culture and experience is strong and rising to the challenge, not just to do incredible things such as invent, discover, break records, but throughout history, blacks had to overcome not just the struggles of doing those things, but also being persecuted and seen as less than by others. Throughout history, blacks were not even considered human, but property. The fact that black people are now considered our leaders, role models, and neighbors and friends just goes to show how much has changed and just how much black culture really has made an impact. As expressed throughout this writing, I've told the many ways actual black culture has and continues to affect history as a whole. But I didn't need to, nor should I have to, since you're watching black history and culture evolve, grow, and happen right now. Everywhere you go, articles in the news, major breakthroughs are being made right before your eyes. So I don't think that there should be any Black History Month. I think it should be Black History every month, every day, every year, since that's what Black history is. It didn't just start magically when slavery was abolished. It started when the first black people were born, and it will continue to happen so long as there are black people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. That was awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, next you will hear from Gabriella Palomo.
Good afternoon. My name is Gabriella Renee Palomo. I am a 14-year-old freshman. Throughout my youth, I have played multiple sports as well as instruments in my school band, volunteered, and tutored, all the while maintaining straight A's. One of my most proudest and accomplishing achievements yet is being a member of my school's girls wrestling team. My dream college is an Ivy League school, such as Columbia. I plan to become a gynecologist in the future. I chose this essay topic because as a Black and Mexican female, this matter is very relevant to me. So, what exactly is a stereotype? A stereotype is defined as a generally held and established simplistic idea or guise of a distinct person or thing. When people stereotype someone or something, they're being judged, prejudiced against people who they don't even know. They could be the complete opposite of who they seem to be, just because of stereotypization, especially Black people, who are one of the most stereotyped ethnicities. A typical stereotype of Black people would be laziness. This stereotype shouldn't even be relevant because not even 200 years ago, we were forced under violence to work from sunrise to sunset, working tirelessly. That could hardly be described as lazy. Yet, laziness as well as characteristics of submissiveness, treachery, jeopardy, and dishonesty historically became stereotypes assigned to African Americans. Similarly, a study conducted by Joshua Correll and his colleagues at the University of Colorado Boulder proved these stereotypes. Currently, as the news we see regularly shows, the crime rates of being higher for certain populations, mostly minorities, Black people. And so this creates an instinctive stereotype that a brown person would be more linked to danger compared to a white person. But we don't see those same associations with other races. Correll came up with a computerized shooter bias exercise that exhibited images of targets, Black and white men, carrying objects, either weapons or regular objects like a Coke can or a wallet. When they saw a person and the object, they had to click on whether or not to shoot. Correll found that civilians were more likely to shoot unarmed Black men compared to relative to unarmed Black men and even armed white men, which was accredited to the stereotypes associating Black people with danger. Likewise, researchers at Stanford University examined 95 million traffic stop records from 2011 to 2018. They found that Black people are pulled over more frequently than whites by day, but are much less likely to be stopped at night when a veil of darkness masks their race, making them more difficult to racially profile. Despite the lower number of nighttime stops, the study found African Americans and Latinos are more likely to have their cars searched than their white counterparts. Our stereotypical foods are fried chicken, Kool-Aid, watermelon, etc. Watermelon wasn't even a racist stereotype until the Jim Crow era. After the abolishment of slavery, watermelon once symbolized self-sufficiency among African Americans. Following the end of slavery, many Southern African Americans grew and sold watermelons, and it became an emblem of their freedom. Many Southern whites reacted to this self-sustainability by turning the fruit into a symbol of poverty. Watermelon came to exemplify a banquet for the dirty, lazy, and immature. To shame Black watermelon marketeers, popular ads, including postcards, pictured African Americans thieving, fighting over, or sitting in streets eating watermelon. Watermelon being eaten by hand to mouth without utensils made it impractical to consume without making a mess, therefore branded a public nuisance. However, these aren't the only prejudiced ideas against our people. Such things as microaggressions are a posit too. I have a story about this. My mother, who is an African American woman, worked as a manager at a Wendy's as a senior in high school. One day she decided to help her team out and work as a server. There was this old white man who came to Wendy's and ordered the same exact thing every day and was always served by the same person, who just so happened to have the same colored skin as himself. My mother took his order and brought it to his table. He said he wouldn't accept his meal unless he was served by a white person and asked for the manager, whereas she was the manager. This story conveys the microaggression that people of color are perceived as service workers before they are seen as people in higher positions. Microaggressions include questions like, "Are you sure you can handle that? You're smarter than I thought you were." Just because of the difference in melanin, our people are seen as less educated and aren't even treated equally. Myself, as a person of color, I witness these microaggressions pretty frequently, such as, "You don't act like a normal Black person. Why do you sound so white? You're pretty for someone dark like you. Am I supposed to act a certain way because I'm brown? Am I supposed to talk a certain way because I'm brown? Am I supposed to dress and look a certain way because I am brown?" Apparently, since I don't follow those stereotypes, because I talk properly, am intelligent, and am not loud, I am perceived as being whitewashed. I'm criticized for my appearance, traditions, behaviors, and preferences because I do not follow the typical stereotypes. The sad part about this, it is not even other races telling me things, but people as melanated as myself. Especially when I wrestle. When I step on the mat, people's expectations of me is to be this angry, aggressive, and dominating athlete, which couldn't be any further from my true self, which is my Achilles heel. To resolve these stereotypes and microaggressions, we need to change our perspectives and approach people regardless of their race, unbiased and open-minded. Also, people need to stop taking part in actions that augment and promote these stereotypes, such as social media posts. People of color can complain about being stereotyped, but then will proceed to post something contributing to those stereotypes, but say it's okay since they're the people being stereotyped against. While this might seem okay, it really isn't, because joking about it only takes away from the seriousness of the conflict at hand. This is one of the many solutions to end these stereotypes and microaggressions. We can all do our part in resolving these stereotypes and microaggressions. We can really make a difference, one person at a time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you again, Gabriella. Next, we'll hear from Willow Rosario.
So my name is Willow Rosario. I am a 15-year-old freshman at this school. The college that I want to go to is Stanford. I want to go to their statistics department so I can be a statistician. I picked this topic because as a Hispanic female, I have suffered stereotypes and microaggressions by people who don't know better or just think that we're not as worth it as them. Before we get into everything, I think it's reasonable to first explain what stereotypes and microaggressions are. Daryl Wing Su studies the psychology of racism and has defined racial microaggressions as everyday insults, indignities, and demeaning messages sent to people of color. Stereotypes are defined as widely fixed images and thoughts about a person or thing. I'll be talking about stereotypes and the 3 types of microaggressions. 3 types of microaggressions are microassaults, microinsults, and microvalidations. Microassaults are more obvious and deliberate than the others. Microinsults and microvalidations are unconscious and unintentional. An example of a microvalidation is when someone says they are colorblind or racism doesn't exist. When someone is saying something like this, they're disregarding that person's humanity and who that person is. An example of a stereotype is when someone automatically assumes that a person of color went to college on an athletic scholarship instead of an academic one, as if a person of color is only physically capable but not mentally capable, which we all know is false because a person of color is as capable mentally as they are physically, just like everybody else. A lot of people are just raised thinking that a person of color is less articulate or intelligent. It has been ingrained in them by past generations that people of color are less educated than white people. They have been raised with this stereotype. Some more examples of microaggressions and stereotypes are when a cashier watches a person of color while they shop because they believe that just because they are not white, that person will shoplift. Or when people address the white person in the room instead of the person of color, outright ignoring them and acting as if they are invisible, often showing a preference for the white person. This is pure disrespect to people of color. This is showing that they believe that a person of color is not even worth their time. They believe that just because they are not white, they do not have enough money to buy from them, or that white people are of higher importance just because of their skin tone. An example of a micro-insult is when someone says that a person's hair is not professional, or that they only have good hair when it's not nappy, which is like saying they only have good hair when it is more Eurocentric, which is the tendency to believe that Western thoughts and civilization are better than others. So basically, they believe that hair is only good hair when it is more like a white person's hair. I myself have experienced this kind of behavior that stems from a stereotypical mindset. Some stereotypes people seem to have about Hispanic females is that we are all very extroverted and we like to be like all dolled up all of the time, right? I'm very introverted myself and I like dressing casually most of the time. People would say that I'm not really Hispanic because I'm not fluent in Hispanic or I don't act like a Hispanic should be. I am also watched often when I go into shops. They follow me with their eyes to make sure I am not stealing. Once someone even asked me if I was in a gang or if my family was in one just because I am a Hispanic. Microaggressions and stereotypes can contribute to the mental and physical health of people of color. It can cause or heighten anxiety and depression, especially in the younger generations. We are all victims of past generations. We are harming our fellow people by holding on to the old and biased thoughts of the people of the past. We need to learn to let go of the past and create our own futures where we no longer stay biased against anyone and where we will see that no one is worthless or less than others just because of the color of their skin.
I want to do something special. I want y'all to give her a round of applause. She's like super nervous, but she got up here and she did her thing. That's one of the things that we're trying to. That's one of the things that we're trying to get our students and our young men and young women to understand and know that speaking out is something that we have to do. All of us have to do it. She's brave. So next we'll hear from Sydney Osborne.
Good morning. My name is Sydney Osborne. I am 16 years old, and I am a junior here at North Hardin High School. I am also part of the student council, my position being the secretary. I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and I was raised in Tallahassee, Florida. I moved to Tampa, Florida when I was about 8 years old, but unfortunately I had to move back to Tallahassee because my mother fell ill and passed away with her 4th battle of breast cancer. About a year and a half of living with my aunt and uncle, I decided to move up here with my father and little sister. Growing up, I always used to help my mother when she was battling her breast cancer. It all started when I was about 5 years old. Whether that be bringing her medicine, doing chores, or simply having a conversation, I was there for her. With that being said, my dream job is to become an oncology nurse. I've seen the scars, the tubes, and I know how cancer can really drain a person. Despite it all they need is a helping hand and reassurance, and that's what I want my mission in life to be. In my spare time, I like to read, listen to music, and play my guitar. When I graduate from North Hardin High School, I plan to go back to Tallahassee to fulfill my college career at Florida A&M University and HBCU in Tallahassee. Their nursing school is amazing, and I know that I will push myself more to succeed. And with that being said, my oratory essay today is about the history and impact of Black culture. Black culture is often seen as just a simple thing, but it's really more than what meets the eye. The history and impact of Black culture. When one thinks of Black culture, they may think of the stereotypical things like food or music, but Black culture is so much more than what meets the eye. Dating back to slavery to the election of our first Black president, Black history should not be taken up lightly. It should be talked about with joy, passion, and even a bit of pain. We have never had it easy, but in the words of the late Maya Angelou, we may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated. Everyone knows of the pain and torment that African Americans have endured, whether that be racism, segregation, police brutality, or slavery. But do we really know more than what the school system just teaches us? Names Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and Harriet Tubman all ring a bell immediately. These educators, activists, and historians have brought our people closer to freedom, justice, and prosperity. But they aren't the only ones who have made an impact in the Black history. There are many hidden heroes who have fought for our rights. Born on September 5, 1939, Claudette Colvin was known as an activist taking part in the 1950s civil rights movement. For refusing to give up her seat to a white woman on the bus, 15-year-old Claudette was arrested. And if this sounds familiar to you, yes, Rosa Parks did the same thing 9 months later. These actions have led us to where we are today. Referencing the uprising of Black Lives Matter movement. The Black Lives Matter movement was first founded on July 13, 2013. For its first years, the Black Lives Matter movement made no money. But after the killing of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin in 2012, there was a strong urge to bring this movement into light. Longing for justice, people all across the world, from New York City to Paris, France, began to protest, give speeches, and sign petitions, all to be sure that those lives got justice. The Black Lives Matter movement isn't just a movement, but a key when it comes to Black culture. Preserving Black history, civil rights, African culture, and slave rebellions are just one of the few many examples of how Black or African culture has impacted the United States, but the entire world. But what really sparked the uniqueness of Black culture? When did we really begin to discover ourselves and make our own? Dating all the way back to the 1800s, when African Americans were in slavery, slaves would often sing songs in the plantations. Wade in the Water, for example, has such a deeper meaning than what our ears hear. Wade in the Water is a song of warning to slaves to get off the escape trail and into the water to prevent the slavers' dogs from tracking them down. Some songs that were sung by slaves are often also sung as gospel songs in the church. For example, Amazing Grace. The Underground Railroad, for an example, one of the songs, Follow the Drinking Gourd, was teaching slaves how to read a map, follow signs, symbols, and escape to the north. In the 1970s, cornrows began to become back as a trend as trends began to rise. But in actuality, cornrows were long before the civil rights movement, specifically worn by male and female slaves finding ways to protect their unique hair type. But what about the inventions? Most people are aware that a Black man, Garrett Morgan, invented the traffic light. Did you also know that he invented the gas mask? In 1949, Frederick M. Jones invented the first ever portable air conditioning unit. In 1878, Osborne Dorsey invented the doorknob and the doorstop. Many daily living devices were made by African Americans back in times where they got 0 to no credit. Even still, to this day, not only are these things used in America, but they are used worldwide. Now's the time that we should be thankful for the progress that has been made by our people. As Black History Month comes to an end, we should realize that February is not the only time of the month that February is not the only time of the year that Black culture should be taught about and celebrated. Every day, Black history is still being made and should be talked about with pride. This is the history and impact of Black culture. Thank you.
I really hope y'all are learning something, because these youth are teaching us something. We as parents, we teach them. Sometimes we need to allow them to teach us. I almost thought I was at church. I almost said amen. Next, we'll hear from Naisha Borner.
Hello, my name is Naisha Borner. I'm currently a sophomore at Hardin High School. When I graduate, I plan on either attending Spelman College or John Jay College of Criminal Justice to major in criminal psychology. Today, I will be presenting stereotypes of microaggression. Even though quite a few people have chosen this category, I still wanted to do it to talk about the negative effects that these things can have on Black children and how they affect their self-esteem and confidence. I don't want to just talk about how they're bad and we shouldn't do it, but I want to talk about how when people mock them and imitate the negative depicted stereotypes and how it affects them, and how even in our own community we still push these negative stereotypes onto our children. You're so articulated. You need to switch up your hairstyle. It's like me wearing a baseball cap in the middle of the job. It's unprofessional. Why do you let the white girls act more Black than you? Is that your real hair? Can I touch it? Or they'll simply proceed to touch it without permission. All the quotes I stated are stereotypes of microaggression that tens of thousands of young Black children have heard from their fellow non-Black classmates, or maybe even teachers. Even to Black adults from their that have jobs and careers have experienced and heard these things from their non-Black coworkers and bosses. Black people are the blueprint, a phrase you may have or may not have heard, but essentially it means that Black people start trends and thousands of people will follow, but typically will not give credit. Examples can be things such as long acrylic nails, gold teeth, our cultural hairstyles such as braids and cornrows, and etc. When I think of the phrase Black people are the blueprint, I think of the beauty and creativity that we've created, and I also think about how non-Black people try to copy and imitate it. There isn't necessarily a term for it, but on social media, people have termed this called modern day ministry. Modern day ministry is a perfect explanation of what these people do. Out of nowhere, they will throw on a heavy accent to imitate the way Black people use AAVE, which many people have labeled as a Black accent. They will often become obnoxiously loud, rude, and have an attitude with everyone and anything, with the addition of getting interest in things such as drugs, rap music, and trying to make substitutions for the N-word. Notice a trend with the things I've noticed, with the things I've listed that people try to imitate. All the things I've listed are commonly overused stereotypes of Black people. From what I've personally seen, these people are trying to imitate the stereotypical Black person. They get so caught up in it, it becomes their personality. When these people are called out for their imitation and mocking of trying to act like this stereotypical Black person, they often get extremely defensive and start claiming things such as, I've always acted this way, or this is just how I grew up, when in reality it is not true. The problem with modern day ministry is that it is becoming a double standard for non-Black children versus Black children. Non-Black children are allowed to mock and misuse AAVE, they appropriate our hairstyles, and just mock the way in general that some Black people may act. But versus Black children in schools, they have no choice but to code switch. They have to adjust their hair, the way they talk, and their attitude, simply to not be stereotyped as these things that these other kids are doing, and they get away with, just for the non-Black kids to push that modern day ministry to the side as they get older and for it to become a mere phase. I remember seeing this a lot in middle school, of white kids trying to act more Black and just trying to imitate the way these Black kids were acting. But then they would turn around and talk to some of the other Black kids that didn't act this way and say, oh, but you act so white, and stuff like that, trying to put a label on the other Black kids. like white children trying to define an actual black kid's blackness. One might assume that African Americans would not push these stereotypes onto other black children, but that is untrue. Black people will often push these negative stereotypes and depictions onto their young and impressionable. Again, like I was saying, this happened a lot at the middle school I attended. Lots of black kids didn't act as the stereotypical black person. So if you did it, you would be told things such as you dress white and you act white and whatnot. Things like this cause self-love and self-confidence issues. Excuse me, I lost my place. And the diversity in the African American community is so important and deserves more recognition and praise within the African American community. Teaching our young and impressionable children to love their hobbies and the way they act, no matter how white, will encourage self-love and slowly get rid. And slowly get rid of the negative depictions that they try to push onto our people. Thank you.
You did a great job. You did a great job. Next, we'll hear from Tyler Woods.
Can everybody hear me okay? In the back? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tyler Woods, and I'm a student here at North Hardin High School. I partake in numerous amounts of clubs such as Beta, Kuna, and KYA. I am also a member of the volleyball and track team here at North Hardin High School. After high school, I am attending Howard University in the fall of 2022 to major in political science. My reason for choosing Black mental health is because mental health in the Black community is not talked about enough. I see it as a serious issue in our community that needs to be addressed in an effective and positive way. Being a Black teenager in America, I noticed my fellow African American peers going through such trauma. They aren't able to get past the emotional setback. Instead, my peers struggle to fight depression and can't get the proper help or support they need. I also see this same struggle in many adults. So I stand in front of many of you today to crack down on mental health in the Black community and its importance. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. It can affect who you are and what you will become. When an adult experiences childhood maltreatment, whether it's within the family or from society, these traumatic events have high rates of damaging a person's physical and psychological well-being. Adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, are traumatic events that occur before a child reaches the age of 18. African Americans experience higher rates of ACEs of peer victimization, exposure to community violence, gangs, family members suffering from mental illnesses, and family members dying from violence and physical illnesses. If negatively suppressed, it can cause long-term negative effects. Believe it or not, African Americans since the beginning of our oppression have had long-term generational curses passed down. The generational curses to suppress our emotions and to set it aside because there's better things to worry about. It's a cause and effect. Through the study of epigenetics, it is found that trauma experienced by parents can impact the DNA and behavior of their children from generations to come. In the Black community, unaddressed trauma that was inherited in ongoing social injustices cause chronic daily living of post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD. PTSD symptoms are feeling of a future shortened, exaggerated straddle responses, sleep disturbances, outbursts of anger, and hypervigilance. When a Black child displays signs of PTSD, instead of receiving the treatment, they are charged with abuse of a teacher or terroristic threatening. Due to systematic biases in the education system, African Americans are oftentimes viewed as violent and receive higher punitive consequences, instead of seeing the symptoms of PTSD, depression, and/or anxiety. Put yourself in the body of an African American male/woman who's dealing with a deep depression. This already might have been you or is you right now. Imagine the vanquish you must feel when a family member invalidates the feelings you may have. An African American individual should feel how they feel unapologetically. Research suggests African American women tend to cope with mental illnesses primarily by spiritual avenues, but seek professional treatment as well. This may include prayer and developing a relationship with God. These are found ways of coping with depression. Although mental illness appears across race, ethnicity, and gender, some groups appear to experience a higher burden associated with mental illness. Compared to Caucasians, mentally ill African Americans have more chronic diseases, higher levels of disability, higher rates of inpatient service use, lower rates of outpatient mental health service use, and more barriers seeking mental health treatment. It has been engraved for us as a community to feel like we don't have the authority to speak up about the troubles we may be facing. As a community, we push all these bad habits on our young, which is why they continue and progressively get worse as the generations grow. It is our duty as a younger generation to change the way we think and feel. Ultimately, in order to make a difference in our community, we must choose change. In the words of Lily L., when in doubt, choose change. Thank you.
And our last contestant is Jahari Gilmore.
I'm Jahari Gilmore. I'm a 9th grade student at Hardin High School. In the future, I hope to go to Spelman College, and afterward, I would like to pursue a career in the publishing, writing, and editing world. I chose the topic mental health in the Black community for my essay because I feel like it's not talked about enough. And yeah. Throughout history, Black Americans have had to be incredibly enduring. During slavery, African Americans worked long, grueling hours in sweltering heat. In racist encounters, Black people have learned to monitor displays of emotion while internally battling fear and anger. Within the workforce, Black people face pressure to hide their true selves or be exceptional in order to be taken seriously. This strength that Black individuals have been taught, shown, or used firsthand has led to the development of false ideas about mental health. Many believe that this incredible strength provides protection from emotional vulnerability. Some also believe that those struggling with mental health are different and weak-minded. This belief is false. Studies have shown that Black Americans face the same amount of mental health issues as any other group of people. Denying this fact keeps mental health stigmatized and prevents people from getting treatment. To begin, before we can understand the problems and damages caused by stigmas of mental health within the Black community, we must first understand the inconsistency of needing help and those that receive treatment. Studies show that of the Black Americans that might benefit from treatment, only 1 in 3 receive it. This is problematic because the majority of people that may need help are not getting it. Stigmas have made treatment unlikely in some Black households. Further, what causes stigmas around mental health in the Black community? To begin, poor access to appropriate and culturally responsive mental health care creates a stigma around mental health treatment. Some therapists do not understand the cultural ties to mental health and how it affects approaching the topic. Because of this, many view therapy as a joke, unnecessary, or helpless, which shouldn't be the case. If people take therapy lightly, they are highly unlikely to waste their time, money, and energy on treatment. Next, the pride and lack of understanding of some Black parents prevents kids from getting the help they need. Whether online or with friends, it was surprising to learn about the experiences of other Black teens. While expressing their negative feelings and interest in help, they received negativity from their parents through responses like, "There's nothing wrong with you," or "How can you be depressed? You've got clothes to wear and food to eat and a roof over your head." These words suggest that their children's feelings are invalid. If kids are afraid to talk to their parents about their mental health, they're more likely to fear judgment from their peers and less likely to communicate with unfamiliar people, such as school counselors. This can lead to more mental health complications, but little to no mental health treatment. Secondly, stigmas prevent Black Americans from getting treatment by turning their mental health struggles into a joke. For example, in some Black households, people battling mental health crises are viewed as foolish, or crazy members of the family. Because of a poor understanding of what mental illnesses are, these family members can be written off as unusual. If they do receive help, younger Black kids consumed in the various crazy tales of this family member can form the belief that talk around mental health means the subject can't properly function in society. This leads kids to believe that making fun of or judging those with mental health illnesses is okay. These kids are also likely to carry this belief into adulthood and restart the cycle. These examples show how stigmas around mental health are created. Finally, how can we break down the stigmas and increase the amount of Black Americans that receive mental health treatment when needed? To start, informing people about the truths of mental health can make mental challenges less taboo. When people learn that mental illnesses shouldn't be a secret, they're more open to treatment. This is because knowledge makes for more honest discussions and decreases the humility of treatment. Next, culturally aware mental health professionals can help decrease stigmas. This is because an aware therapist can boost the comfortability of those that fear their livelihoods won't be understood. This can encourage people to trust their mental health professionals and stay in or start going to therapy. Further, Black youth should be taught more about mental health in home and at school. Teaching children to not feel embarrassed or uncool for struggling with mental health can prevent the stigma from cycling. Similarly, teaching kids about the validity of mental health concerns, even while having a good, providing family, can stop feelings of shame. This will increase the amount of youth that get treatment when needed. These efforts can improve mental health in the Black community and teach people that strength comes from pushing through all obstacles, including mental health. Mental health in the Black community is stigmatized. While Black Americans have been incredibly enduring over the decades, mental health is not always a challenge you can endure on your own. Even so, some Black Americans don't believe that mental health treatment is necessary. This can be caused by in-home discouragement and negativity and can be fixed with in-home encouragement and positivity. The help of medical professionals and schools can also minimize the stigmas. By spreading the reality and importance of mental health through the Black community, Black Americans can help uplift each other. So, to start the conversation, perhaps we should all begin with a single question. What are the stigmas that I've encountered, and how can I help fight them? Thank you.
Can we give a round of applause to all of our participants? They did a great job. The topics that we had for this contest was Black mental health, stereotypes and microaggressions, the history of hip hop, and the history and impact of Black culture. I picked those topics because I wanted our youth, Black, white, yellow, green, blue, all indifferent, to understand that Black history isn't just a month. I heard one of the students say it should be all year. It should be all the time, because we all make up what we are today. However, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll get with the judges to tally up the scores, and as soon as we're done with that, then we will award our first place, second place, and third place winners. Welcome back. We're doing a final recap on the points, just to make sure that everything is okay. Again, well, first of all, I can't say again. However, I do want to recognize Ms. Leslie Hall. She has been a great help, a great help. Just as many hours as I've put in with this contest, she has put in the same amount and even more. I give you Ms. Leslie Hall.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to take a minute from North Hardin High School, and I work in the Youth Services Center there, to say a thank you, and I brought the paper up so I could get it right, to the Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity, Inc., Alpha Omega Sigma Chapter. Fantastic gentlemen, constantly working in the school. And I don't know, I didn't write down the sorority with it, but the Zetas, they're also involved with us. But yes, These two organizations come in monthly and do mentoring for us. They have, I know Mr. Brown spent a lot of time on our display case for Black History Month in the front hallway of the school. They're here whenever I call. They donate at Christmas. They come in and serve lunches to our students on special occasions. They have just given so much to our community and to North Hardin High School. From us, I wanted to say thank you. So thank you so much. And I appreciate all our students who got in on our pilot program here. This is the first of what hopefully will be an annual event. And I know that we had several more sign up. They got a little nervous at the end. And that's okay, because we're going to do it next year, and I'll see them then. But just to say a big thank you to our students who just stepped out on this initial voyage with us, and I appreciate you coming to do that today, so thank you. And I'll turn it back over to Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. I'll ask our president of our chapter, Brother Toomer, to come up and help me. Before we give out the winners, I just want to say for everybody, I have certificates for everyone. I was so busy yesterday running around doing different things, trying to get the library set up and everything, making sure people should be where they were supposed to be, and I let the place close on me that have the certificates. I know y'all are out of school Monday, but I will be up here Tuesday with everybody's certificate. Everybody will receive a certificate. So I'll call them out, and then you'll go on. So I want to give a round of applause to every participant here today. Every participant. You all did a great job. Every one of you. Everybody did a great job. It's always a little rough, a little shaky on the first. And just imagine, in 3 or 4 years, you can say, I was one of the first people to start the annual Black History Oratorical Contest, because we're going to continue to do this. Not only will we do it here, we're going to extend it to different schools. So with us extending it to different schools, we're going to need you to come back, and we're going to need you to participate and talk it up to your friends, talk it up to your classmates, let them know. So moving on with it, our third place winner is, I don't want to do like Steve Harvey and give it to the wrong person. No pun intended. Our third place winner is Gabriella Palomo. Our second place winner is Tyler Woods. And our first place winner is Jahari Gilmore. So we want to take a picture with all three, and then we want all of the contestants to come up. Again, I want to say thank you to all of the participants. You all are winners in my book. Thank you for the parents for coming out, encouraging your children to participate in this program. I thank you for our judges for spending your time, 2 hours, to come out and be a part of this. I thank you from Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, the Alpha Omega Sigma Fort Knox chapter, our president, myself as the vice president and the education chair, North Hardin High School, extremely. I met a new friend while I've been here, Miss Smith. She's the librarian. She opened up her library to us so that we can put on this amazing contest. There was some refreshments in the back. If you would like to get a refreshment, you are welcome to it. Also, I want to let you all know that our chapter is doing great things in this community. Not only are we in the schools, but we're outside feeding the homeless, and we're doing different things. Some of the things that we have coming up, we're doing a debate contest next school year. Get your kids ready. Get your children ready. We're doing a STEM competition coming up in a few months. The flyer will come out. Ms. Hall will push that information. It's another way for your children to get into a better situation. Not saying that their situation isn't already good. However, the STEM is going to push them into entrepreneurship. If you have any entrepreneurs in your house, the children that once the flyer comes out, I won't speak too much on it because I don't want to talk and say the wrong thing. However, the opportunities are there. The Sigmas are here. You'll see us. Amen. I get behind the podium, I think I have to preach or something. It'd be that way. I really thank you all. I thank you all for coming out.
Just really quick, sorry, Pastor. Really quick, I wanted to, as a judge, it was so hard. For those of you who didn't place, it was very difficult to judge because all of you had wonderful topics, or you followed the topics wonderfully. And I don't know about everybody here, but I mean, I think education was given. So it's so important that you guys continue spreading the education and sharing your education, because if not, how else are people going to know? So in order to make a change and to be the change, we've got to educate people. So continue doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for participating. You all did a wonderful job. And as a North Hardin graduate, I am so proud of you. So just keep doing y'all, okay? And just keep fighting the fight. It's going to be different. Thanks.
So we're not going to let her come back. So with that being said, this concludes our first annual Black History Oratorical Contest. I thank you all for coming, and I bid you Godspeed.